Isaac and his mother lived alone in a small house on a hill.
Hello everyone, it's Kevin and it is time to power on and bend the rules for this one. Retro isn't a year on the calendar, it's a feeling. And somehow, The Binding of Isaac earned that feeling. There's a certain kind of game that doesn't just end when you turn it off. It lingers at the back of your mind and takes over your soul. You close it, but you're already thinking about the next run. Every time you fail, you ponder what could have saved you, what mistakes you made, what might happen if you tried just one more time. For me, that game was The Binding of Isaac. And what's crazy about it is, I didn't just buy and play Isaac once. I've played every version of it. And somehow, they keep finding ways to make it better. After 800 hours plus, here's my take. When I say that I first played The Binding of Isaac on Steam, I'm talking about the original version. No, not Rebirth. Back when it was still built in Flash. Back when it ran a little rough and looked a little rougher. Back so long ago in 2011. But all of these facets added to the charm at the time. What Isaac did better than almost anything else at the time was being able to be unique. It was truly a breath of fresh air, and that's what kept me going. Isaac was always wild because it was a roguelite action-adventure twin-stick shooter with RPG elements. The game was also comedic but also very dark at the same time. The game was also extremely tough, especially with the low item count back then. It wasn't a power fantasy. This was a game about being weak, scared, and alone. Every run felt desperate, every heart mattered, and every bad item or failure to execute felt devastating. And yet, I couldn't stop. The randomization was addictive in a way that felt new. You weren't mastering levels, you were mastering situations. Sometimes the game handed you a broken and overpowered build, but sometimes it handed you nothing, and you were forced to learn how to survive with whatever you got. It wasn't polished, but it was bold, and that was enough to hook me. They did release a DLC called Wrath of the Lamb in 2012, and it featured new floors, items, enemies, rooms, challenges, and a new character, Samson. To be honest, I stopped playing for a bit around this time due to work and school, but I'm sure I would have loved it. All in all, this became the building block that resulted in The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. And this wasn't just an update, this was a rebirth in the truest sense. It came with a new engine, new visuals, smoother controls, and more consistent performance. But the biggest change? The game finally felt like it could grow. Rebirth kept the soul of the original but refined everything around it. It was a true remaster and it played better than ever. The graphics were cleaned up and there was no longer any lag. Rooms were clearer, hitboxes felt fairer, and enemies felt more readable. And suddenly, Isaac wasn't just a difficult and punishing video game anymore. It was a strategic one. You could plan, adapt, and learn. This was the moment Isaac went from interesting indie experiment to a foundation for something much bigger. There were now 11 playable characters, including Azazel, Eden, the Lost, and Lazarus. There were also new bosses, 100 items, and new enemy types, which not only increased the difficulty, it also increased the variety. They also added signature starting items for each character, which helped with the balance. Speaking of balance, they did balance changes with the items and pickups as well. There was even multiplayer if you dared to play it. Afterbirth is where things started to get wild. This expansion leaned hard into systems. Lilith and the Keeper were introduced as new characters. The Lost was made usable with their decision to give him Holy Mantle. There were new items, and new enemies were also introduced. There were also new bosses and paths added to the game. The new mechanics could spiral out of control, fast. But what I loved about Afterbirth was how it rewarded knowledge. If you understood the game, you could find a way to beat most runs. Risk-reward became the heart of every run. Do you take the devil deal now? Or do you wait for angel rooms? Or do you gamble this run for something better later? Maybe use the dice room with D4 to reroll your whole run. Isaac stopped being about reflexes and it became about decisions. And every decision felt like it mattered. One new feature that was interesting was the daily challenges, which also included a leaderboard. Greed mode was added to the game, and it was good to play just to switch up the gameplay a bit. P.S. Lilith was a beast in it. Afterbirth Plus didn't reinvent the game, but it expanded the sandbox. There were more challenges, they added a new boss called Delirium, who happens to be a cheat by the way. There were more endings and more ways to interact with systems that were already deep. They introduced 2 more characters in Apollyon and the Forgotten. This was the era where Isaac felt endless. You weren't just chasing completion anymore, you were chasing possibility. No 2 runs felt the same, and even hundreds of hours in, this game could still surprise you. That's rare. Then, out of nowhere, came Repentance. This DLC came out 4 years after the last one, so I was super surprised. But honestly, this is where Isaac truly resurrected itself. Repentance didn't just add content, it added intent. More balance changes were made so skill would matter more than luck. The new enemies were scarier and definitely felt smarter. They added 2 more actual characters in Bethany and Jacob and Esau, which may sound like 3, but it's complicated. If it wasn't crazy enough, they added alternate versions of every character, which also came with their own unlocks. There were now even more paths to take and more content than ever before. But the most impressive part about this game now feels complete. With 34 playable characters, 700 items, 45 challenges, and 102 bosses, 6 of them being considered super bosses by the way, I am not sure what more they could add after that. The thing about this patch is that Repentance respected veteran players without alienating new ones. They delivered the definitive version of this game, and the game trusted you. And that trust is why Isaac still works today. It doesn't hold your hand, but it does reward mastery. There is one problem though. When people talk about Isaac now, they often say Repentance. But what really changed the game was another update that came out on November 19th. Repentance Plus. I'm still shocked to see this game going. This version introduced online co-op and PvP, which is odd. They also rebalanced a lot of things in the game. This is where Isaac stopped letting you coast. Balance changes didn't just tweak numbers, they changed the expectations. You really need to experiment or research to find out what has been buffed or nerfed to develop your builds. Knowledge wasn't optional anymore. If you relied on broken builds before, this version checked you. But if you understood Isaac, this was the most rewarding it has ever been. I feel like this DLC was Isaac asking, are you just playing the game or are you learning the game? The Binding of Isaac didn't just succeed, it changed indie games. It proved randomness could be meaningful. The genre wasn't dead, but it gave it a boost. It taught us that roguelikes could tell stories without dialogue. It reminded us that failure could be addictive instead of frustrating. And for me personally, Isaac grew alongside me. From the messy Flash days, to the polished, brutal, brilliant game that it is now. I didn't outgrow it. It grew with me. And if this is truly the end of Isaac, I am glad that it turned out how it did, and I was able to play one of the greatest games of all time. If you've ever lost hours to Isaac, well, you already know. And if you haven't, just remember, it only takes one run to go deeper into the basement. Which character was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this retrospective, consider subscribing. And that's a wrap. It is time to reboot. I will see you on the other side.
Are you sure this is how you want this story to end, Isaac? You're the one writing it. It doesn't have to end this way. Here, how about we tell it a different way? Maybe a happy ending?
Okay, Daddy.
Good. Are you getting sleepy yet?
Yeah.
Okay, So, Isaac and his parents lived in a small house on the top of a